What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Web3 DJs. You know, this is your number one source for all things crypto, NFTs, and Web3. If it's happening in the space, we're talking about it right here. Today, we've got a massive guest lined up for you guys today. Someone that's really near and dear to both Hofstra and my heart. For nearly 3 decades, this individual has been leading organizations through transformation and growth across a number of different sectors. This includes consumer cannabis brands, internet, software, nonprofit organizations, and capital markets. And most recently, he's made the transition into Web3, which we're going to talk about today. We want to welcome none other than the CEO of the world's most exclusive cannabis club, Mr. Ryan Hunter. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks for joining us today.
What's up, Sticky? Thanks so much for having me. I'm so stoked. I'm blushing from all the kind words. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think one of the best ways to really get into the show would be kind of a quick personal testimony, at least from me, and Hofstra can tell his story as well. So you're the CEO of the Crypto Cannabis Club. As a matter of fact, I remember when they brought you on, how hyped I was for that announcement. You know, one, just the NFT brand or project as itself kind of going into this formal structure, I thought was huge. I was very bullish on it, you know, telling all my friends about that. So I was quite excited for that. But if we take a couple of steps back, this club was really, actually, not really, it for a fact was the first project that I joined that was not a rug. He set the standard for this is what a project is, this is how things should be. I really began to understand community aspect through the Crypto Cannabis Club. And as I was mentioning to you earlier, for lack of a better phrase, the CCC really lit that fire underneath me to dive deeper into NFTs and Web3. And so definitely excited to have you here today.
So glad to be here, Sticky. I'm so glad it's had an impact on you guys. It's great to hear.
Absolutely. And Hofstra, if you want to just tell your story, you've got a really cool piece of your heart as well.
Yeah, no, it was the first project that I figured out how to mint. I missed out on Gutter Cat. I missed Bored Apes. I didn't know how to really navigate Web3. So when I was able to mint, I minted like 18 Crypto Cannabis Club tokers. So yeah, definitely. I could probably just agree with everything that Sticky said. But I'm actually really interested to hear about your story. So what is your background? How'd you find Web3 and how'd you find the Crypto Cannabis Club?
Yeah, great question. You know, it's definitely been a journey. I spent really the first big chunk of my career in tech. Worked for a lot of startups. I got my start working for a big systems integrator called Accenture. But after that, I did a bunch of startups as well. Worked for Adobe for a few years. And then from 2008 to 2012, I worked as a financial analyst covering technology stocks. So I really had a front row seat to the financial crisis that was happening at that time, but got a lot of experience working in the capital markets and really developed a good understanding of markets for assets, especially. I didn't do much in the way of work with bonds and debt, but stocks and equities. So really got to understand how markets work in a really front row kind of way. After that experience, I spent a few more years in tech, sold a company, and then in 2015, cannabis had been legalized in Colorado, and I've been a regular cannabis consumer for most of my life. And I think, you know, it was really exciting to me to get into that industry. I had an opportunity to work with a guy who had developed a new technology for cannabis oil extraction. I helped him get that off the ground. Then I worked for a couple of guys who own several dispensaries, and I managed their largest dispensary. And then I also built a 10-acre cannabis farm for them. So I really got exposed to a lot of different elements of the cannabis industry through those roles. And then from the end of 2017 until the first part of last year, I was the chief operating officer for Willie Nelson's cannabis company. So I oversaw business operations and took that brand from 2 states to 8 states. And then last year, I started to do some consulting work, went out and started doing advisory work for different companies in the cannabis industry. I had a really good friend who was super into NFTs, and I was starting to learn about them, but I hadn't made the leap in myself. And he said, "Hey, there's this project I'd love for you to take a look at." And I said, "Okay, sure." So it was the Crypto Cannabis Club, and I said, "Wow, this is really cool. What is it?" And I got to meet the founders, and I just said, "Hey, I'm just blown away by your vision for what you guys are doing here, and I'd love to help any way I can." So I started out just doing some advisory work, no charge, doing it for free, just because I was super
Right.
on what they were doing. And then in the fall, they brought me on board as a contractor to help them develop partnerships with different cannabis companies and accessory providers. So that went really well. And then at the beginning of the year, they asked me to come on board full time as the CEO. So I've been doing that ever since. It's been a ride. It's been definitely a lot of work, and certainly it's been stressful, but it's been a whole lot of fun, and I've learned so much.
That's cool. So all right, I guess what point did you come on? So the mint was what, like August of last year ish?
Yeah, the collection minted out the first week of August, and I came on around September.
Cool. So since you come on, like how have things been? What you expected? Completely different? Challenging? Like, what do you think
Yeah,
now?
a little bit of all of that, definitely a lot of what I expected, having worked in technology. There's a lot of applications there, building tech companies and managing development teams. So a lot of familiarity to those processes, and working with an early stage company where everyone's just kind of running around at top speed with their hair on fire, trying to get everything done. A lot of experience in those types of situations. And we have a really small team at the Crypto Cannabis Club. We don't have a lot of outside investment. We haven't built a big team. We run really lean, and we do as much as we can with that. And I feel like, I'm really proud of what our team has delivered. We've delivered a lot for the community over the last year, and kept, I think, we've delivered on all of the roadmap. We definitely have some more work that we need to do on the game. We had a few setbacks there, so definitely some challenges. We had our original game developer resigned from the project, so we had to find a new game developer. And of course, with what's happening in the markets right now, that's been challenging for us as well. But we're getting through, and we have a really strong community and a really strong vision. And this is a marathon; it's not a sprint. We still have a long ways to go ahead of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
speaking of delivering for your community, there's kind of this overarching question that every project seems to have. What is the utility, right? And where I think a lot of projects kind of falter, if you will, is they launch the art, but then they don't really know like what their project stands for. Like, they'll launch an animal PFP, but just that doesn't necessarily. If they launch a horse project, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's into horses who buys into this project, right? But you guys are really unique in the fact that most individuals who are part of your community have some sort of tie to cannabis, and I think that that's really allowed you to be able to deliver utility to them in the form of discounts on DYOR. Old Pal, you guys have launched your own cannabis company that your holders get a discount on. King Palm, and the list goes on and on and on. And you had mentioned briefly that in the beginning, you were kind of brought on to kind of facilitate these partnerships between the Crypto Cannabis Club and these Web2 companies. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I have about 7 years of experience in the cannabis industry. So I had a lot of relationships with different cannabis brands and accessory providers. So a lot of it was just reaching out, and I helped to really communicate what we're doing to people who had no idea what's happening in Web3. I had to explain what NFTs are 5 times a
Right.
day.
Right.
There's a lot of that, just helping people to understand what we were trying to do. And really, like you said, Sticky, the vision here is to create a social club around the NFT collection. And the tokers are a way for us to provide amazing art to people, but they are also a membership card of sorts in this community. And we have events that we do. We have metaverse experiences, and we have an educational Twitter space once a week. So there's a lot that we're really trying to provide, really to create an authentic community around the collection.
So you're a year in the NFT startup space, which is probably feels like 5 years in a regular startup space. It's almost like you're learning it backwards. Instead of throwing a whole business plan together, you're like, we're going to do this, and then let's figure out how to do it. But what is the most challenging part of what you've had to do since you've joined this space compared to the traditional startup world?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think for me, people have asked me this before because I worked in Web 1, Web 2, and they said, how's this compare? And for me, I think the biggest similarities are really to the cannabis industry. In a normal startup, let's take like a tech startup, a web startup. I always compare it to, it's like juggling a chainsaw, an egg, and a feather. It's crazy. But in cannabis, that's any startup. But in the cannabis industry, it's like doing that, but you're standing on this wobbly platform that's on top of a ball, and you're surrounded by sharks, and people are shooting at you, right? So that is very similar to what Web3 is like as well, because in many ways, the cannabis industry, there's no stable platform, right? They're building the rules while they're trying to build the companies and all of the support systems that go into building companies. Very similar to what's happening in Web3. There's not a real stable foundation. You do have a lot of the market is evolving while we're also trying to build a company within that market. So I think just having that level of complexity and uncertainty is challenging for sure. But I'm used to it from the years of work that I've done in the cannabis industry. And then I think the second thing is really the community aspect. Communities aren't always happy, and you're definitely going to have some folks who are vocal about their unhappiness. And over the years, I've had to manage those types of situations as well, not necessarily in the cannabis industry, but in different nonprofit work that I've done. I share this sometimes. I started the Facebook group for our neighborhood in 2008, and I grew it to 8,000 members over those years, and as the only moderator. So I had a lot of experience working with people in online communities and navigating some challenging situations. So I feel really, really prepared for the challenges that I've faced. But I think it's just that dynamic quality where there's so much that's changing, but also that's what makes it exciting and fun to work in.
Yeah. So you guys minted in a boom market. I remember at that time you almost could mint anything and it was going to 10x like immediately. And so you had this run all the way up until probably the end of the year last year, and then now it's totally flipped. Has that forced you guys to change your strategy? And if so, how?
Yeah, for sure. So we definitely, we have sold some additional collections to generate some additional income for us, because the royalty stream from the original collection wasn't enough to cover our operating costs. And we've been working to bring in some outside investors as well to keep the project funded and moving forward. So that's the challenge. And again, having worked in a number of startups before where I've had to raise money and had to find other sources of capital to keep the business moving forward, I have experience doing that. But we'll get through this. I think we've got some good options, and we've got good direction ahead. So I think, like I said, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, but we're going to get through this time.
Yeah, that's something that I'm glad you brought up, and I wanted to ask you a little about. And I'll go ahead and share my screen here. But you definitely, as you mentioned, you've launched a number of different collections. What we're showing here is the, I guess we'll call it the OG collection, if you will. Can you talk to us about the different collections and maybe if there's membership tier differences or what the differences are between the collections?
Sure. Well, the Genesis collection and our flagship, I guess, collection is what we're looking at now. That's the NF tokers. And the tokers get a ton of the benefits that we've already talked about. We have close to 30 different partnerships with cannabis accessory providers and brands to provide product discounts. We have a utility token with soft staking, so you can earn those tokens just by holding one of these NFTs. We airdropped our other collection, which is the NF tokens. Those are the plants. Those got airdropped to all of the holders of the original collection back in September. And then the plants are now they're effectively game pieces in a play to earn game. And we launched the version 1.0 of that game just a couple of weeks ago. And we'll be adding more features to that game. And eventually it'll turn into a breeding game where you'll be able to breed the plants together and create new plants. And we've got a lot in the works that we're working on over the rest of the summer there. We also have our weekly Twitter Spaces that provide cannabis and psychedelics education.
Nice.
And we have live events. We had a spring break trip to Mexico for our members. We had a party in LA for 420. We just had a party in New York during NFT NYC. We've had parties at Art Basel, and we'll continue to have a bunch of other events as well. So those are all the benefits that you get from owning the Genesis collection. That's the NF tokers. Those are the little characters that we saw. And then the plants, which is what you were just showing, those are the NF tokens. Those are used as game pieces in our play to earn game. And then we have a couple other smaller collections. We released a collection called the Token Bosses. And these are really just sort of a fun collection that provides additional utility. So if you own one of the original collection and a token boss, then you can bring, for example, you can bring a guest to our events at no extra cost, and you get some other benefits there as well. And then last week we launched a collection called the Crypto Cannabis Club Nomies. And these are psychedelic characters that are super fun. So that collection minted last week. The artwork is just amazing on those. And we are going to have some discounts on psychedelic products and other things like that. And we'll have some special events from time to time for holders of the Crypto Cannabis Club Nomies collection. So there's a few different ones that we have.
So what does a Crypto Cannabis Club party look like?
Yeah, it's great fun. So usually there's we try to find venues that are consumption friendly, so you can consume cannabis at the events. That's sort of the standard. Usually we'll have T-shirts or some kind of giveaway. We get sponsors from cannabis brands and accessory providers, so we usually have a goodie bag from our partners where they provide swag to the club members. And then some kind of entertainment, band, DJ. You know, we had a taco truck at the 420 party. You got to keep people fed. Of course. You know, that kind of thing. But they're a hang. It's a vibe, man. It's just a fun vibe for people who are into cannabis, and it's great to see the members of our community. We have folks that come to all these events. We have people who have been to every single one of them that are really super into the live events. And it's fun to see them at all of them and just to get to know them and make those friendships. That's really the coolest part.
That's awesome. How well are you versed in like the tokenomics of this project? That's one thing I'm
well versed. You
are? Can you talk about that?
What do you want to know specifically?
Like how the staking mechanism works. Like what do you
sure.
Like if I do that, what do I get?
Yeah, so the NUGS, it's $NUGS. That's our utility token. And it was funded. The liquidity pool originally had a $200,000 applied to it. So it's pretty sizable liquidity pool. And then if you own an NF toker, you connect your wallet to the DApp site. And the first time you do that, you get an initial allotment of 300 nugs tokens. And then every day after that, you get an additional 30 nugs that you can go back and claim. And those just accrue over time. You got to go and claim them. And then those tokens, you use them to pay the entrance fee for the NF Tokens game. And then 10% of that goes to a treasury wallet, and the rest goes back as prize money that you win. And then I'm working on getting the nugs accepted as payment in dispensaries. So we have a couple of dispensaries that have said that they would be pilots for this. And I'm working on finding a payment processor that we can work with that'll accept the nugs. And I've got some good conversations going there, but it's going to take some time to get that through. So that's the ultimate vision, is to be able to use these tokens in dispensaries to buy product.
That's awesome.
Have those partnerships been hard to convince people to do that because the lack of knowledge, or have people been pretty receptive when you bring this to them?
Yeah, so far, I haven't reached out to a bunch of places. The ones that I've spoken to so far are either they have a relationship with the community and some of them own tokers themselves, right. Or they already accept crypto in some form. So we're finding places that are receptive to using cryptocurrency for payments and have an initial understanding. So that'll be the first places where, like I said, we're going to do some pilots, figure this out, make sure it works right. And then we will have an effort to go out and try to get it to as many places as we can.
That is really awesome. I always feel like that's a huge gap that projects are missing when they launch their native token. It's like, okay, well, what's the actual application here? And so it's really great to see that you guys are, thinking ahead on that. And I wanted to take a second and just show off this Nomi's art, because I am really fond of it. This is what you were talking about earlier, and this is your most recent collection. And, we can see that you guys have kind of made the shift from cannabis exclusive to more of like a psychedelics approach, if you will. And I guess that goes right in hand with the education that you're talking about that you guys provide weekly.
Yeah, we think so, and there's a lot of I think appreciation both in the cannabis community around psychedelics, and people that are into psychedelics are into cannabis oftentimes. So there's a close relationship there. But yeah, I'm blown away by the art too. It's super fun, really, really detailed, pretty great.
So before you got into Crypto Cannabis Club, were you buying NFTs? Like, what was the first project that you bought into?
Crypto Cannabis Club. Yeah.
Really? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I hadn't really caught on to it. Like I said, I was pretty focused on the work that I was doing, and I'd been hearing about it, but I didn't jump in. It was my buddy who I've known for a long time, who was really a collector. He's the one that turned me on to it. So Crypto Cannabis Club was my first one, and then there's this really cool project called Program Failures, and it was created by actually a guy whose first NFT was a toker, and the gentleman's in prison, and he created this project from prison. We had him on Toker Talk. He talked about the project, and so I bought one of his when he was minting those. Really cool. And then I've gotten a bunch as gifts, and I've bought a few other things here and there, but mostly just tokers for me.
Yeah, cool. I actually remember Program Failures. I remember the Toker Talk episode, and I remember the individual who created it. He was trying really hard to, get the word out, right? And it was awesome because it was a project with a cause. So definitely glad that you brought that up. So as the CEO, I'm sure you immerse yourself in the space and try to get kind of like a grip for what's going on, what's happening, especially in the ever-changing space that is Web3. Are there any like trends that you see now that maybe are a threat, or any trends that you think are an opportunity that you guys want to take advantage of at the CCC?
Yeah, good question. I think, what we're really trying to do is just stay focused on our vision and not get too distracted. We've got a lot on our plate right now. So, I think what we're going to see is a lot more of the metaverse worlds evolving and developing. So we're paying attention to that. We want to make sure that we have a presence in the worlds that are meaningful and are relevant. And a lot of what I do too is try to understand the intersection of cannabis and Web3. So I have a lot of involvement with other projects. There's this really cool project called the People's DAO, and they own cannabis cultivations and dispensaries. And I'm a big fan of what they're doing. So I try to stay up on those kinds of things.
So, yeah, you're talking about the vision, and we're, like I said, we're 1 year in. What does 2, 3, like, what's perfect look like if you could achieve all of your goals?
Yeah, I think I want to get us to a point where we're financially stable and we can start to really deliver on more of the experiences that we've already delivered on. And having, I think, a big key that I've seen is the live events. When we can get our community members together in person, magic happens. So I'm excited for that. I'd love to see. Right now, I think we have about 4,500 or 4,400 wallets that hold NF tokers. I'd love to see 6,000 or 8,000 wallets. I'd love to get more people involved in the community. I think those are some of the biggest goals.
Yeah, I remember when the goal was to get to 4,200 wallets, and so yeah, you guys have piece by piece continuing to build.
Yeah.
So what live events do you guys have coming up this year? I know we've got a couple under our belt. Or is there any the next 6 months out?
Yeah, we're working on some. We haven't announced any yet, but we definitely are working on some for later in the fall. I think right now we're getting to the stage where everybody's doing vacations and things like that. So I think August is going to be a little quiet. Plus, let's be honest, with where gas prices are and plane tickets, it's hard to get people to travel and do those kinds of things. So we're definitely working on some things for this fall. Nothing that we've announced yet, though.
Yep, that makes sense. And so another thing that we definitely wanted to hit on is there were two founders, Kevin and Jimmy, and then they brought you, although you worked closely with them the entire time, they brought you on to be CEO. Can you talk to us a little bit about the founders, what their role looks like now, and maybe what that dynamic looks like between the three of you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the dynamic is very collaborative. We really talk, pretty much every day of the week, even on the weekends. I talked to them yesterday, as a matter of fact. So we're talking pretty much every day. We collaborate on the decisions. I'm not a bossy person, so I'm not really calling the shots or that sort of thing. Mostly I'm making sure we're staying organized, doing the things that we need to do to stay on track with the roadmap. But Jim is really closely involved with the community management side of things and Discord and Twitter, and Kevin has really been more working on these collections a little bit behind the scene. He's super into the artwork and works with the NFT artists to get them produced. And as you can see with the detail with the Crypto Cannabis Club Nomies, that was a huge project for Kev to be working on. That took months to get that over. So yeah, we work together really closely. I talk to those guys every day and we collaborate a lot.
So you have the three of you. What's the rest of the team look like, or is that it?
That's mostly it. We do have folks that help us run Discord, social media. We have a host for the Twitter Spaces, and then we work with outside consultants to do graphic design and marketing and those kinds of things. But yeah, that's the whole team.
Wow, one of my favorite things about the crypto cannabis.
I would also be I gotta also shout out our amazing Discord moderators. A lot of them are volunteers, and we do have a lot of help there. So our Discord is very lively. We've got about 35,000 subscribers, and it's a great vibe, and that takes a lot of work, and that's a lot of volunteers too.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can hop in the Discord, or at least back in the day, whenever I had a question or something like that, I'd just say, hey, here's what's going on. To something totally different, and there was always someone willing to help. And so I definitely enjoyed that. And that goes in line with what I was about to say, where one of my favorite things about the Crypto Cannabis Club is that in Twitter Spaces and this sort of thing, well, it is obviously a bonus if you do own a toker, the sentiment was always like, hey, you don't have to, pay these hundreds of dollars to hang out with us, right? We're here to kick it. We're just, a couple of people hanging out and having a good time. And on top of that, the other thing that I really enjoyed is, and I haven't seen this anywhere else, your project has broken up into chapters so that individuals can connect with other individuals that are near them, right? There's a Texas chapter, California chapter. You guys went international and this sort of thing. Can you talk to us about what breaking it down, breaking the pond down into smaller sections has done for your engagement and, continuing to keep that community growing?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited about is really, as I just said, we have a small team, and the only way that this community can grow is if our community members bring more people in. Otherwise, it becomes like a rich guys club with
Right.
not a lot of social interaction. But it's blown me away. We have a very active club. I'd shout out our chapter 8 club in New York. They're super active. They have meetups regularly. Our South Florida chapter had their own 420 dinner. I was in May. I was super excited to go Memorial Day weekend to Indianapolis. I went to the Indy 500. We have a chapter in Indianapolis that organized a camping trip and went to the races. So that was incredible. Yeah, and as you mentioned, we have chapters around the world too, in other countries. So it's an international club, and that I think is going to be one of the biggest things going forward is having more and more of those real world chapters getting together IRL to hang out, to sesh, to socialize. And I think a lot of them are starting to see business opportunities where they're networking with one another and working on different business ideas too. So there's a lot that's happening there on the ground.
Yeah, how does
Yeah.
that work? So if you own a toker, do you get full IP rights? And have you seen a couple of guys, you said they're working on it, but have there been spinoffs and people actually doing this full time with their own businesses yet?
Yeah, you do. You do get IP rights for the art of the toker that you own or the other NFTs that you own. And yeah, I think what we've seen is not necessarily businesses around the tokers art themselves, but guys who are meeting one another and create, like in the chapter 8 club, there's folks that own a cannabis delivery service, and there's folks that have gotten together to do consulting work on Web3. So there's cool stuff happening there. We've got a guy who wants to open Toker Tacos, who's working on a business plan for a taco truck that'll have his toker on the sign. So there's some cool stuff happening.
Yeah, and so speaking of business, we kind of mentioned it earlier, but I remember when you guys first launched your cannabis brand. I remember vividly they brought you on, you tasted and tried the different strains out. Then you brought it to the community, you gave them your report, and the community kind of voted on those strains. Can you talk to us about that process, maybe where that stands today and really what it means?
Sure. Yeah, that was our first shot. We did it in California. And the idea is we wanted to create a cannabis brand so that ultimately, if you own an NF toker, you get discounts on the product and eventually be able to get free product. So we launched it in California, again, as a kind of a pilot to try it out, to work out all the kinks. And I visited out there and hand selected several strains that I thought were good. And then had about 6 of them that I thought were the best. And I looked at it probably a dozen or so, narrowed that down to 6. And then I tried them all, wrote up my notes on it. And then I said, this is my review of these, because we couldn't have everybody try them. But we took pictures of them and wrote up the notes. And then I definitely said, these are the 3 that I think are the best. And that wound up what people voted for. So, and then we created artwork from the packaging. The packaging, I should have brought some with me for this, but I don't have any in front of me. But the packaging is really cool too. And so there are 3 different strains, and each package had different artwork. So we created NFTs of each of the packages, and then there's an RFID tag on the packaging. So if you bought the package, Well, first I should say, if you had an NF token, you could buy them at a 30% discount. And
Right.
then you get the package, it comes with its own NFT. You scan it, you scan the bag, and then you could download the NFT to your wallet. And then we also sold those to people who weren't in California and couldn't buy it legally. We wanted them to be able to get the art as well. And then if you had 3 of those, we had a green list for the Crypto Cannabis Club Nomies, where you would get a free Nomi if you had 3 of those packages. So we just did that as a benefit for the people that bought those. It's an exciting project. We're excited to do it again. Part of the challenge is, in order to be able to provide that discount, you have to have a retailer who's willing to go along with it and work that out. So in California, we partnered with a delivery service where they could apply the discount on an online order, and it worked great. So that's one of the challenges, is we need to find a way to work with the dispensary to get the discount to the club members. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't rolled it out more broadly at this point. Yeah, there you go. That's what the packages look like.
Now, I know more and more states are coming on and legalizing cannabis, but that probably has to be a little tricky on, how that works, because not everyone lives in California. Like, I live in New Mexico. We just went rec, I think, in April.
Yeah.
But what's the challenge there with trying to make that work across the state?
Again, I have a lot of experience doing this. I did it for Willie Nelson's cannabis brand, and I've done it for several other cannabis brands as well. But I'll give you the short version. I'm happy to go into more detail, but it's pretty complicated. Like I said, if you want to work at it from the transaction back, you have to find a retailer that's willing to provide a discount. Then you have to usually the retailers in most states, it depends, from all the states have different rules. So that's a challenge on its own too. But in some states, the retailers grow their own cannabis. In other states, they don't. And so if you have a retailer that grows their own cannabis, then you could just do a deal with that retailer. We also want to make sure that the product is of high quality. We don't want junk, right? So you have to vet the quality of the product as well. And in other states where the retailers don't have the cannabis themselves, you have to find a distributor who's willing to work with the retailer. And then ultimately you do have to find a grower to work with as well. And then you have challenges around the packaging. Every state has different rules and regulations for the packaging, because our NFTs look somewhat like cartoons. Some states have restrictions on that. So it's very complex. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you got multiple layers there. Like, just doing that in one state's probably tricky enough, but now add however many you guys are trying to work, and that's a tough problem to solve.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, it's actually interesting to think, like, even just in Web3, because that's one scenario, right? And I tell people this all the time. It's like, we consider it dial-up mode to when, the first internet started. And these are the challenges that, the technology somewhat hasn't caught up to the ideas that people want to do, or make it seamless enough. And that's one of the tricky parts, is, trying to get things to work and get mass adoption that way. So I my hat's off to you. That's being a CEO of a company, trying to figure those problems out is not an easy thing to do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said earlier, that's why, Web3 is so similar to cannabis, because there's so many different moving parts, and none of it is established, and none of it's been around for a long time. Cannabis is in the dial-up phase too.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, most definitely.
It's crazy. It's been around for a while. It doesn't feel like it, but it really is.
Like you were saying earlier, it feels like dog years, just like Web3, where 1 year feels like 7.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I guess I can't really say I'm fresh out of college anymore, but I went to college not too long ago, and I remember the sentiment there in a state where it was not legal, which has now changed, was we're living through the prohibition of cannabis. In many
That's
states
right.
that's still very true. And I wanted
And
to bring this up because it is another thing that I really you the Crypto Cannabis Club is top notch in terms of their memes. Even if you're not a consumer, if you just want something to put a smile on your face, follow them on Instagram. They've got something. It seems like every single day that kind of brightens my day, for lack of a better phrase. So, are you involved with that at all? Are you a meme guy?
that I'm not. That's a lot of the stuff that Jim does. He works on that with our social media manager. But I love it too. I check it out every day as well. They make me smile for sure.
Hey, so we're kind of coming up a little bit. I know we talked earlier. We kind of run anywhere, from a half hour to an hour. But is there anything that you would want to tell someone new about the project, maybe that's coming in, trying to figure out, Web3 NFTs, specifically your project, for like a new crypto NFT consumer?
Sure. Yeah. I think what I find is people are really looking at these things, and seems like one of three ways. One is there's people that are really into the art, and that's one thing that we pride ourselves on. We want to make sure that these aren't scribbles. This is real, legitimate
Right.
art. We work with a professional artist, and we spend a lot of time making sure we get that right. And then there's folks that are, speculators or investors, just like any type of artwork. People buy it because sometimes they buy it because they love it. Sometimes they buy it because they think it's going to go up in value, and they think they'll sell it one day for a higher price point. So, we try to make sure that those collectibles have value, either intrinsically from the artwork or through the additional utility and benefits that we provide as a benefit of owning that art. And then the third reason I think why people come to these collections is for the sense of community. So we really try to hit it across all three of those areas. And that's what I would say to somebody who's really starting to learn about Web3 and NFT collecting is no matter what of those positions you're in, we think we have something to offer you. And it's a great way to come into a community that has a great vibe. People are kind. I'll share you a quick story. I'm not really a gamer, and I never really used Discord before getting into the CCC. And so my daughter is though, and so I say, hey, can you take a look at their Discord? I want to get into this, but am I going to get raked? Are they going to make fun of me? What's it going to be like? And she went through it. She's like, no, Dad, these guys are really cool. I think you're going to be just fine. Don't worry. So that's what I would say. The vibe is there to be welcoming, just like, in a group of stoners. If you're going to go sesh, hang out, and have a chill time, that's the vibe that we're going for. So it's a great place to learn. It's a great place to find really terrific art. It's a great place to have really cool experiences if you want them. And that's what I would say. I think that I love hearing that you guys said that this was your first NFT. It was my first NFT. And I've talked to a lot of other folks that have had that same experience. We're a great place for people to start.
Absolutely. Yeah, just like I shared at the beginning of the episode, I echo all of the things that you just said. The Crypto Cannabis Club is a great stop for in the NFT space, but it's a great first step if you're looking to get involved. And I could not agree more. So before we go, one of the things that we do like opportunity to pick our guests' brains about what's going on in the market, like what they think. And so let's just quickly what's going on right now. So Bitcoin we see is at $20,000. It's up down about 1% over the last 24, up about 1% over the last 7 days. ETH looks like it's doing the best here. It's up 16.61%.
Baby.
Yeah, 16% over the last 7 days and 1.14% last 24 hours. I mean, ETH fighting hard here. So what are your thoughts on the market right now? Is there anything that you're doing specifically, holding, selling, stacking? Is there another blockchain that you're looking into, and anything that you want to provide us on that?
Yeah, I think So first of all, I am not a cryptocurrency expert at all by
Sure,
any
sure.
means. So let me
No,
just throw that out there from the
right.
beginning. I know boatloads about cannabis, and I think my experience in the capital markets has given me a point of view, which I will share. A
Right.
lot of currency trading, whether it's fiat currency or cryptocurrency, is going to be impacted by the value of the dollar, the value of the euro, and other fiat currencies. So it has to have some notional value to anchor around to exchange, right? So,
Mhm.
I think that's one element that's impacting this. So if you're looking at cryptocurrencies valued in dollars, if the value of a dollar is going to go up, the cryptocurrencies are going to go down. The value of the dollar goes down, the cryptocurrencies on a relative basis are going to go up. And so, because of the inflation that we're experiencing in the US and because of the policy changes that the Federal Reserve are implementing, that's going to have an impact on the dollar. The value of the dollar has an impact on global currencies, and the value of the dollar is going to obviously fluctuate with the value of cryptocurrencies as well. So we're going through a very volatile time. I would expect continued volatility through the end of the year. If we get a resolution to the war between Russia and Ukraine, that may provide some stability. The Fed may get a handle on inflation. That may provide some stability. But for now, I would expect to see continued volatility, at least in the near term for the next 3 to 6 months. I feel safe making that kind of a prediction. And there's actually been some economists who have written about the way that NFTs can provide intrinsic value to Ethereum. I know, of course, there's NFTs on other blockchains as well, but predominantly they are on Ethereum, and people tend to value their holdings. And I think that will provide some stability, in my opinion. And again, there's economists that have written about this as well, where I do think NFTs will provide a stabilizing function around Ethereum, and I think that could be why you're seeing Ethereum outperform some of the other cryptocurrencies, or at least it might be more stable than other cryptocurrencies. But that's about all I got for you. I don't have a lot of other wisdom I can share.
It's a good take.
That was great.
Good
Yeah,
info.
that was perfect right there. Yeah, so I guess before we go, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up, maybe that we should have asked about that we did not?
Man, I think we hit everything. You guys are great. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on board and speak with you. I think we covered all the bases, and I'm excited that you guys are a part of the community, and we're always excited to welcome new people to the community as well. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on. And if you like this content, always please like, subscribe, tell a friend, retweet, share. Any feedback would be great. If you have questions, we'll put your socials in the description. We'll tag the
Flash them on the
project. So if you
screen.
guys want to find out about the Crypto Cannabis Club, just look in the show notes. Outside of that, thank you so much. Really enjoyed what you had to say, and thanks for giving us your time and coming on today.
Great. Thanks, Sticky.
Yeah, my
Thanks,
pleasure.
Hofstra.
And again, you guys are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Like Hofstra said, we'll have all the links in our description. And then for those of you out there, we've got a great show lined up Wednesday with the Humanians. Just stay tuned, and we'll post that on our Discord. So until next time,
See you later.
peace.